Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? You may recognize this, my Walkman WM-EX606. In a previous episode, I had picked this thing up for pretty cheap off of eBay and found that it had a few problems. First, it just didn't want to power on at all, and that was due to corroded battery terminals. But even after I got those cleaned up, it didn't want to move the tape, and that was, of course, due to the classic problem of a deteriorated belt. I got that swapped out and then found yet another problem that was just kind of bizarre. You'd get this horrible screeching noise out of the headphone output unless you crank the volume all the way up. But even then, you'd only get the audio out of one channel and it still didn't sound all that hot. I decided to shelve this thing at that point, thinking, it was probably a problem with one of the chips on the main circuit board in here, and maybe I'd find another parts unit later on. Well, lots of people in the comments of that video said it was likely due to bad caps on that circuit board. And that was something I had considered at first, but didn't think too seriously about because there's only 2 electrolytic caps on that board. The rest of them are all tantalum. And so the likelihood of just one or both of those 2 seemingly random electrolytic caps causing the problem didn't make a ton of sense to me. But I decided to revisit this one anyway to see if, maybe the comment section was right. So there were 2 different kinds of caps inside this Walkman that needed to get replaced. One was a surface mount cap, and then another one was this weird electrolytic radial that was sitting kind of on its side, but it was in this strange square casing. If you looked really close at the end though, it appeared that it could have been leaking a bit. So there might have been some truth after all to all of those comments. So I was starting to think, okay, maybe I am on the right track here. That cap was easy enough to replace with a standard radial electrolytic. I couldn't find any more of that bizarre kind of rectangular shaped one. I just bent the legs a little bit on the standard cap and it soldered down to the board, no problem. The other cap was surface mount, and I decided to get out the hot air gun to work on that one simply because of the proximity of all of the other components on the board next to it. It would have been really hard to get my iron in there to try and desolder it without taking some of the other components off the board. Ultimately, I was able to get that cap replaced as well, no problem. And one thing I did notice while replacing both of them is I was starting to get a little bit of that kind of fishy smell like you typically do when caps go bad. So I was really starting to think, okay, this very well might do it, or in the very least, this is something that needed to get done anyway. The last thing that I wanted to fix was actually a mistake that I had made at some point during the previous repair attempt when I had accidentally snapped off the stem to the switch on the side for the Dolby noise reduction. Not quite sure how I did it, but pretty sure that I did. I had tried to glue that switch back together in the previous episode, but that didn't really work out all that well. Thankfully, I was able to find replacement switches that were a close enough match, and I got that one soldered in on the board as well. I got the casing all put back together, but then I noticed something strange. The deck just wasn't quite working right with the transport, so I popped the cover on it again and found that while it would work in one direction, it actually wouldn't reverse correctly. It would try to engage the reverse functionality, but it would just struggle and click a little bit and then fail. Fast forward would work fine, but reverse wouldn't, or vice versa. And after thinking about it a bit and initially blaming it on my repair attempt, hey, maybe it was something wrong with one of the caps that I swapped, or I did it wrong or shorted something out, I looked at the service manual specifically about how all the gears and everything inside this work, and I realized it wasn't an electrical problem, but rather a mechanical one. I looked really close in through the side with the board in place and found that that sideways mounted electrolytic cap was physically touching one of the gears that was involved in the reverse mechanism. I think I figured out why Sony had to use that weird rectangular cap, and that was simply due to the clearance. The tolerances inside this Walkman are so tight, Sony couldn't use a standard surface mount cap or a regular radial one. I couldn't simply move that cap a little bit forward or back because of the size of the gear, but I realized that the surface mount electrolytic next to it did have plenty of space. So I simply flipped the cap around, put some heat shrink tubing over the legs to keep it from shorting out on anything, and mounted it kind of right next to that electrolytic surface mount cap. And that actually took care of the problem. Both directions worked, problem solved. So here we are now. I can tell you that the tape transport on this works correctly, but I haven't listened to it yet to see if those audio problems were solved. So let's do that together. All right, so I have a test tape here, and in case you're curious, this is a chrome tape. It knows what type of tape it is based on this little switch assembly over here. It can actually tell based on the notches. That's why there's no separate switch on this unit to tell it what type of tape you have. It figures it out automatically. Earlier portable cassette players required a switch if they supported things like chrome and metal tapes. Also got a freshly charged gum stick battery here. And then let's hook up the audio cable. And well, here goes nothing. Cool, I'm getting audio now. And the screeching's gone. It doesn't sound amazing, I'm gonna be honest. And obviously it's only in the left channel. But I think that could be easily explained by perhaps a problem with the volume wheel. The tape heads are something that I haven't serviced in this yet either. Maybe could be a connection problem too, and that being only in the left channel was a problem that we had last time too, so I think that's just kind of a lingering fault. But the screeching is gone, and I think that's the most important part. That means this thing has some hope, and well, I think it also means y'all were right. I should not doubt you all. Even though I kind of figured everyone was saying, well, you know, bad caps, that's just kind of the catch-all response these days for any sort of electronic problem, right? Oh, it must be bad caps. But there was definitely some truth to it this time around. Yeah, I've got a little bit more work left to do on this Walkman, but it's definitely not a goner like I thought it was last time. Anyway, if you like this one, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at thisdoesnotcomp. And as always, thanks for watching.